cause everything around me green. Get the money, dollar bill, yo.
So we are well into the middle of the development now on this. Development has started. We're tracking well. There is a lot of really crazy, really cool stuff coming in this milestone. So
design has so many Legos now, and I'm just going to nuts.
yeah, absolutely.
And Halish is on the other end of the Frostweaver initial implementation, so he's been going nuts.
Yep.
So we are all going nuts with all the fun toys we have.
Yeah. So very, very cool. But we aren't gonna. We aren't ready yet to talk about all the things that are really coming in that one, so we're going to hold off on that, and that will be the subject of a future update. As you guys know, in order to pick up some development velocity, because this milestone is so impactful, I basically asked the team to do a freeze on feature updates to the actual live environment. So we are a bit of a lull from updates going out right now. That is working. The feature freeze actually is allowing us to put all of our effort into this milestone, which is more important. So I do apologize for that. I want to thank you guys for being patient, because if you're in and playing, it does seem like it's a bit of a lull, and that's just a calm before the storm. So,
however, the feedback that they're giving and some of the bugs that they're finding are still going into Jira, so we're still documenting.
And they're getting fixed in this version.
And they are getting fixed.
Yeah, so don't stop. With playing is great, playtesting is great, and bug feedback and polish feedback is actually great. It's just that we will not have our normal cadence of being quite so responsive to getting all of those things fixed. Not that we fix all of them all the time, but we definitely have had to slow it down. What you guys don't see is that there actually is a significant cost for that in terms of just going through the hundreds of bugs and prioritizing them, getting them passed out to everybody, tracking them, then cutting a build once they're all done, having that go to QA. We actually have a 24-hour QA cycle, which you guys probably weren't aware of. We have an outsourced team in the Philippines that we have a day shift and a night shift so that we can turn builds over very quickly. We push the builds out to them, and they'll then, while we're asleep, they'll go through the entire build and send us back a list of the fixes and what worked and what didn't. And then we go through a whole prop cycle where it has to actually get patched out and put on the servers and prop. So these are, I'm glad that we did it all over the course of development, because these are muscles that will need to be well flexed by the time we go live. These are all necessary skills for a company to have. Most companies, kind of when they're on their first MMO, that's a big culture shock to them because they haven't done it, they're not used to it, and they tend to struggle. We, like every other MMO company, I'm sure we will have some struggles, but in that particular area, we are pretty well versed at it. The downside of it is I estimate it's anywhere from a 33 to a 40% drag on the company's overall velocity, just running a live service while you're actually trying to develop the game. So that's why I put a feature freeze on it. It doesn't mean we won't do any updates, but I'm trying to absolutely minimize the updates. Unless it's something that is like, absolutely things are on fire, I don't want to touch the live service. So there you go.
Yeah,
and
but
very quickly, because in the last live stream, we talked about a potential wipe, and you had me make a forum thread with a poll asking how people felt about it. And so if people haven't gone to the forums again, you should. But in case they haven't seen the results of that and all the discussions around it, let's mention very quickly that we've said there won't be a wipe ahead of the next big milestone.
Yes, because we do know that there will be one at the next big milestone.
Absolutely.
And so like I said, I was agnostic on this. I could go either way. We do have some really cool stuff that we have coming in terms of catch-up mechanics and stuff like that also in this milestone. There's a lot coming. So, but yes, in the current feeling that we got back from the community was, as all things, mixed and highly debatable. However, it seemed like it was more prudent to not do a wipe at this time.
Right.
So that's where we're at right now.
Right.
So.
So anyways, back to your previous statement, I wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is normally, all of that happens in your first year after going live.
Right, for sure. You
and
learn all those lessons.
The game feels so rough at that point, and you make so many changes, like all the stuff that were bad ideas that really didn't get fleshed out, and you didn't see that they were bad ideas until players started banging on it. We're getting a lot of that now.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
So we've made a lot of changes to systems just based on the feedback of our current player base, which is great.
It is very challenging, right? Because when you guys are in and trying to actually play, and there's something that is critical on the whiteboard version of the game, right? The whiteboard version of the game is amazing when I play it in my head. But when you're trying to play the actual version of the game and you're trucking along on that loop on the whiteboard, and it says, and at this point, caravans. And we just haven't done that yet. It doesn't exist.
Right.
So instead, we kind of hobble together something that clearly wasn't really intended, like,
a treasure chest that you pick stuff up, then
right,
you sell
or
it for lots
let's
of.
just make every wall cost 1 knot wood or whatever, right?
Right.
We kind of hobble some piece together. It means that overall it just doesn't feel right as a gameplay experience. I mean, you can tell that there are huge chunks missing. So the challenge is we spend a lot of time doing those little, like, well, let's just stitch this together over here and we'll kind of gumshoe this together over here. We try to MacGyver the whole
Right.
thing together, and you spend so much time doing that, and then you have to later go and pull that stuff out, that it's just kind of, it just drags you down, right? There's a cost
Yep,
for that.
absolutely.
So I just made the call that we needed to actually hit this milestone. We needed to hit the dates, and more importantly, we need to get this game out. And to do that, if it meant that we were going to have to suffer on live through a little bit more of bugs and a little bit less responsiveness, then I thought that was a price to pay. And so again, I thank you guys for being patient with that, because I do know that when you're in and trying to play, it can be frustrating. But I think that in the long run, you guys will be more happy if we get this game done than you will be me trying to continue to stitch it together in little ways to make you happy right now, if that pushes the date out further.
Absolutely.
'Cause
Right.
we need to ship. So one of the things that came out last time, this will be a good discussion. One of the things that came out last time is that we're adding to the strategy game multiple win vectors, other ways that you
Yep.
can achieve points to try and win the game. And the question was why? Like, why would you need this? It should just be all sieging and PvP all the time. So I agree on the second part of that, which is that these things do need to tie back into PvP, but I don't think just sieging and only sieging is the way to win. I think that actually will lead to a more bland experience, right? Because there's not a lot of strategy involved if the only winning strategy is smash you. That's it.
Right.
There's no subtlety to that, right? So the things that we did, where we divided up the idea of tasks into glory, wealth, and power. I'll drill that down into just a little bit more detail, because I want to tie back to what I just said about those being PvP activities. So glory tasks are tasks that you do to help the gods, like just to please the gods. So an example of them, a great example of those would be the Decapathon event that we just did, right? I'm going to go kill my enemies, and I'm going to take their heads back, and I'm going to chip them into a big brazier
Right.
to Yaga, and Yaga is going to be thankful because I killed these people and give me points. It's not a sieging activity, but it is definitely a PvP activity. And because all of these things are going to require you hunting and looking for things out in the PvP areas, they are all, to one degree or another, PvP activities. The wealth activities, right, are about building things. That could be harvesting, crafting. It's also city building and things like that. Because the building materials and the resources that you need are out in the PvP zones, those are also PvP activities. Specifically, the building ones are going to be tied to the caravan loop, and the caravans are definitely going to be high-risk PvP activities. So I don't really go with the idea that it has to only be sieging. I think sieging is definitely a necessary part of it. And in fact, the entire power angle of Glory, Wealth, and Power is all about that. It still is uniquely territory capture. But the other two, I think, are still viable strategies that we want to foster. The other thing is it gives opportunities. So if you look at the way the worlds are going to play out, right, not every team is going to be viable enough to have a keep or fort.
Right.
Like that, just there will be teams that, because they're smaller or they don't have as much play time or their overall competitiveness is not where it needs to be, their options are, well, I can make no points, which means I'll quit because I'll get no rewards.
Right.
Or, hey, here's a thing that I can do that actually will help me get rewards. If I can pick one of these tasks that pops up that is more suited to my team, like ambushing caravans. If I ambush a bunch of caravans, I actually get points for that. Well, that might just keep that team playing. And that's really what we want, is we want people to continually come back and continue playing. So anyway, I get where you're coming from. I think the underlying concern there is that having these alternative vectors will basically cause people to no longer feel like PvP is a primary core of the game. And I hear your concern, and I don't think that's going to be the case, but I will offer you this. If that turns out to be the case, these are just points, right? It's another currency in the game, and we have the ability to balance it. If it turns out that too many of the campaigns, once we start playing them, seem to be going to people who are concentrating on the glory and the wealth and achieving those somehow without PvP engagement, and nobody cares about power, I can't imagine that would be the case, but if it does, I will adjust the points to
Right.
make power more powerful.
I mean, that's
and
just such a
more
weird
impactful.
edge case, right? Because to do any of those tasks, you need to go out into the world.
It is. It's a viable. I mean, I get the concern, absolutely. I just and of course, remember, I've seen the details of the system design, and you guys haven't. So voicing the concern is absolutely valid. I'm glad that you did. Hopefully, I've addressed it just now, and to the degree that I haven't, all I can say is we will make sure to watch, and if that becomes an issue, we have fallbacks and plans to deal with it. I don't think it's going to be an issue, though.
Right. The basis of all of them pulls you into the world.
That's the whole point.
And by pulling players out of keeps and in the temple, they're in the world, which means that you're now vulnerable to PvP activities.
Yeah.
That's just what it does.
And none of these goals are things that you should be able to achieve just hanging out in a temple. Right? You're going to have to go out into the PvP worlds. That's the way they're all engineered.
Yep.
So
All right.
we're not going to put in gain 5 divine favor for sacrificing a bunch of knotwood to Sibel. That's just not, you know, that's not the kind of task we're talking about. So, okay, so do we cover that one well? What do you think, Cece? Did that make sense?
I think it did.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Let's talk about, so the next question was about vendors and vendor limits in the temple.
Yeah. So so we wanted to jumpstart the economy. We went ahead and, wait, is that the right one? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yep.
Making sure. We have to look at the screen every now and then to make sure that we're actually talking about the right question. So the next one is about, can we put can we put timers on the vendor slot, stuff like that. So I got 2 points. Number one, let's answer the question. And the answer is we already have that.
Correct.
So why don't you explain why it works? And then I'll go to the next point, which is kind of the higher level point.
Yeah, the vendors all have an upkeep cost.
Yep.
And when the vendor runs out of money to fund that upkeep cost, it starts eating their items and converting that into money.
And it
to
eats
pay
the
them.
items at the lowest value first, right?
Correct.
So with the assumption being that we're hoping you will log in and manage your vendor. And if you don't, we're trying to make it as least painful as possible.
Right.
So we figured, well, let's get rid of the crap first, and then we'll work our way up to the stuff that you really care about because you set the value, you know, to be that way.
And then when he's out of gold and items, there's nothing else on him, he sits down and 24 hours later, he's going to eat himself.
Right.
And he goes away.
So what about the situation where the server comes up and there's 1 or 2 people that run in and claim all the vendor spots?
Aha. So excellent transition, Val, because this was, I said, let's cover the current system
Yes.
first, and then I'll take it to the higher level. The higher level is that this is a fine plan right now while we're in testing, and I think it's okay to jumpstart the economy. It's not a great long-term solution, right? Especially once we get to real player scale numbers. So I'm not completely opposed to having these slots out there scattered in the world. I don't like them all being right there in the temple. I would at least like to kind of move them outside. Yeah. But in general, I really want to move that behavior back to the EKs. It's just that we weren't getting a lot of EK flow right now. There's a number of reasons for that. A lot of them are on us, just because I've been putting our efforts on campaigns, not on EKs. I want to move that behavior back to the EKs. It's just that to get things up and running now and kickstart it, it was an easy solution for us to put some slots in, so we did.
When you use your pips crafting an item and you roll the first time, so you get to the reroll step, the players wanted to know, we should have a window showing some kind of indication how many amazing, greats, and successes you had in there. And so if you can envision the screen,
they can't see you. You're doing hand.
I'm doing hand gestures.
And they can't see you.
Yes. So we'll wait for the question to come down. But you know the screen we're talking about, the UI widget that shows the 10 pips and they're all circles.
Yep.
So we have a UI prototype that we just never put in game because we ran out of time that milestone.
Right.
But every one of your results, instead of it being a circle, there was like a star if it was an amazing, and a square if it was a great, and a triangle if it was a regular success.
Oh, that's cool.
So you could look and see, oh, this one row had 5 amazings, 3 greats, and 2 whatever, based on the shapes.
Okay.
And it's a simple change. We will get it in at some point, which will inform you when you hit the reroll button. You'll see, oh, all the triangles get to re-roll their stats.
Yeah, so in this milestone that's coming up, we do have a host of new UIs that are coming online, right, to support Divine Favor and all these other systems. After that, then my goal is to go back to the older UIs and start to revisit them. Because unless they were broken, you know, a lot of times it was like, all right, well, let's move on, because we've got new ones that need to come online, and new systems need UIs, otherwise the system doesn't work. So we're now finally to the point where we're going to get in the last set of those new ones, and then I'm hopeful we can move on to
Loop the wagons back.
looping back and starting to polish.
Yep.
I feel like there's a lot of areas where, I mean, the character sheet alone, right? We kind of just kept glomming stuff onto it, and it just I don't like it. I don't like it now. So that's what happens when you add.
That's what happens when you're like, hey, you know what? We need a slot for this, and now we
just
have this other
stick it
feature.
here. Well, there's a little corner over here. Just kind of stick that there.
We're like, hey,
So-
there's just a little tiny spot there. I
It's
can put a button there.
It's also tough because there actually is a fair amount of UI which is just related to polish, right? Where you just go back
Right.
and polish. When systems are still changing and you're like, oh, I've made a change to how this whole system works, that polish effort is largely wasted because you're back to now changing the core.
Yep.
Which means you have to regrow through polish. So there will be a whole round of polish. It's best to wait on that until the systems are as locked as they're going to be. So, and I think
Yeah.
after 5.110, that's when we'll be as close as we're going to get before launch.
Yeah. At that point, it will be like, let's stop adding new things,
Yep.
and let's just polish the ones we have and fix the bugs we have.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Which means you won't see a lot of those huge sweeping additions to the UI.
All
Anyways,
right.
now, we did do some interesting prototype work where we were able to change the input model to, instead of hold down to just repeat your basic combo chain,
Okay.
we were able to do a prototype where if you held down, it did basically a fourth attack. It did a heavy attack.
Right, no, I saw that.
You saw that demo,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I haven't pushed further than that out of demo mode, but some point in the future, it may bear some fruit.
Okay.
It's nice that we have that stuff in and we were able to do a prototype. We're like, hey, can we actually make weapons have different input modes?
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
That's
which
true.
makes
That's
it
cool.
feel different. It's different than a statistical gain, right? Normally you're like, oh, hey, it does 5% more damage, whatever, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
Right, when it actually changes how you left click, it's definitely interesting. So at some point, heavy weapons may all transition to that, but those are more expensive because they have animation.
Well,
costs
I
associated.
will tell you, I don't want to deal with it right now.
Yeah, and
It's
definitely
one
not
more
right
damn
now.
thing.
That's why I kind of put it on the shelf.
It's one more thing.
I prototyped it, put it on the shelf, and I'm like, this is something cool we can
All right,
do.
so the other part of this, you said, hold on, let me explain what heavy weapons are. So for people who might not already be in and playing, what are runic weapons?
Runic weapons are the weapons that unlock in a character during the final promotion tree. They have another gem that can get put in them. They have 3 more subcomponents
So
that can
they're
go in
the
them.
best items in the game,
Pretty
right?
much,
And,
yeah.
and can you find them on loot?
The schematics to make them are loot drops from the bosses in the game.
But how are they created and put into the game? Was a leading question.
Do you mean,
Crafters.
do you
They
mean
come
by
from-
me or by a crafter?
By the players.
Okay, by
There's
the
a
players.
leading question, which is they
Yeah.
come from crafters, right?
It creates a loop between the crafter and the killers where the killers are out killing bosses and things like that. And they'll bring these schematics back and give it to the crafters. The crafters will turn those schematics into runic weapons, and that's some content for both types of players.
Cool.
So, good stuff.
So in line with that discussion,
Yep.
Galvia asked, related to this, is it intentional for offhand weapons to essentially be stat sticks currently?
Yes.
The damage ranges on them are not used for any skills or abilities.
We did not try and attempt to tackle the offhand damage being added to the main hand damage.
Yeah, it's a balance nightmare, right? I mean, eventually, if you allow that, then why would I not do it, right?
Right.
I mean, in our system, right now at least, you largely don't have a choice.
You have to do it because
Right.
you hold 2 weapons,
Right.
right?
That's something that I would definitely like us to fix. It will not be something that we can afford to do before launch.
Yeah.
But I would like to get in alternate weapon styles for the different characters.
And you know what? It all goes back to the archetype race class split.
That is correct, right?
Right,
And that's-
because those weapons, while they're 2 weapons, 2 objects right now, at one point, you remember they were paired.
Oh yeah, we've
was
gone
one
back
object.
and forth a couple times, right? The race class split is still to this day. I had somebody bring it up this week as, holy geez, that was an expensive change and time consuming, and it's true. I still believe that it was the right answer, but we shouldn't underestimate the cost hit associated with it. It was
Yeah.
a big one. Okay, you ready to go on to the next question?
Yes.
The next one is about minors. It's a fairly insultingly worded question.
I know.
But not a bad question.
Right.
Oh, they took out the insult. It actually, the
Oh.
question on ours says, minors currently seem like hot garbage,
garbage.
which is fantastic. So here's the thing. They're not necessarily wrong, though. That's the thing, is our minors do need a pass. I'm not going to say they're hot garbage, but the minors definitely do need a pass. The minors and the majors, I think, both need a pass. Right?
Well, you are correct. However, I think there were some circumstances that were leading to that, which is most of our minor disciplines, and a character can have 3 of them if they purchase them, they have passives on them.
Oh, actually, yeah, back up one sec. So let's, again, I'm trying to remember to do this, is So disciplines is basically our subclassing system. It
Yep.
is a way to add additional powers and activities to your character and passives, passive powers and things like that to your character that they're not racially specific or class specific. So
For the most part, there's some couple.
there are a
examples.
few, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, they're kind of for a cross section of different types of characters. Now I can take this, or you can take this,
Right.
or whatever. And they're similar to, if you play D&D, like the feat system
Yep.
in D&D. Majors are supposed to be big and really impactful. Minors are supposed to be minor and just kind of tweak your character a little bit. So sorry, quick definition for people in our studio audience who are just joining us today.
Yes.
So go back to what you were saying.
So the challenge is we had 3 of them, and our initial idea was, hey, we're going to give characters lots of passive powers, and you're going to have a big giant list of them, and they're only going to be able to load out 3 of them.
Yep.
And as we've been playtesting ourselves and listening to your feedback, we discovered that it's not fun.
Right. I
Right?
don't think it is. No.
The fact is, we give you all these passives, and it basically means you will only ever load out the best 3 in the game. People do the math and they boil it down to the best 3, and it just is like there's no choice there. Right. So what I've done in part of 5.1.10 is when you load out or when you equip anything that gives you a passive, the passive just goes on you.
Okay. So you don't have to load it out.
There is no more loading out of passives. Every single passive, and we've kind of been going this way. All of the promotion capstones in the talent tree, those were auto loaded out, and we're like, this is just a better system.
Yeah.
So there is no more choice there. Yes, that means we need to come up with something else for the humans because
So
they
we
got
need
a
to
bonus.
move that choice now. So to me, the thing that's missing in the system, and this is what I constantly bring up, is I want there to be so many good choices among the massives and the majors and the minors that I honestly don't know which one to take. The feat system in D&D is great. I use it as an example all the time. Is if I take Shield Master, it fundamentally changes the way my guy feels, right? My guy actually feels like a different type of fighter. Now, giving that up, though, or taking that means I cannot be a mounted combatant. I just can't also take Mount Master effectively. So I'm having to make these choices, and they're all so good that it leaves me with a feeling of a kind of excitement. You're left with this nervous excitement of, I want to try this. No, now I think this is a better one. I want to try this. And we need to get that, and we're just not getting that feeling right now.
We weren't even
out
getting
of
to
our
the point
minors
of
and
hard
majors.
choice, though, because all of the minors gave passives.
Right.
And you couldn't, those passives weren't as good as ones coming from majors or the classes.
Yeah.
So it meant that there was no choice there.
That makes sense.
Now, however, there will at least be like, oh, hey, you know what? I might take that minor because it gives whatever, and it automatically does its thing.
So I think the other thing that is useful to remember is that when we made that system, right, that was at one point in time. Now, here we are, we've added so much more to the game that wasn't available back then. So when we take another look now, it opens up. I mean, Frostweaver is a great example, right? As we're designing powers, we get the benefit now of looking at all the other classes and saying, okay, which pieces do we want to pull? And which pieces do we want to take? Poor Knight, who was the first one out the gate, we just kind of had to make his powers. So at some point, in fact, I expect we'll have to go back through the classes a little bit and do a little tweaking as well,
Somebody had
especially
to be
those
the first.
earlier ones. Right?
Yeah, someone had to be the first, right?
Yeah.
And he was our first boy.
Yep. So.
He's going to be.
They're celebrating this change.
Oh, are they?
And everybody's very happy about this. The feedback in the channel is very
Yeah, because basically they've been limited to 3 or 4. Right, and now they're not limited to that, right? They can probably some of the classes will have 10.
Yeah.
Right, so we have to definitely make sure that no one goes off the power scale, but it means that those things are now interesting once again.
Yep.
Which
All right.
is a good
so
choice.
this ties actually into our next one, right? Which is a question. But this is basically I want to see what the slide says. How does the slide says it? Yes. Okay. So in the last Q&A, you mentioned that you have 1,500 unique powers. I'm calling bullshit on that. That's basically what the question is that seems like a big load of BS. So we actually do have, I don't know if it's 15 or 13. It's a big number, right?
It was like 1437 at last count,
so
which is close enough to 15.
We're a little off. So this includes some things that you guys probably don't think of, like if you have a combo chain, that's actually technically 3 different powers.
Correct.
If you have a monster, and the monster has a full set of powers, that has a bunch of powers. If you have a hanging effect, like when you log in the game in season and it says Eternal Spring and you get Plentiful Harvest, that's a power.
Login and vulnerability, like every one of those things.
Yeah. So there's just a ton. Yeah, the game is really, really, really big. You know, we're years into it now. There's a whole lot of game there. So one of the things we are in the middle of doing right now that I'm hopefully you guys will not see any problems from is we're actually going through and just cleaning up a lot of the power system stuff right now. Right, we're trying to get it ship shape and ready for launch, which includes scalability. It includes fixing a whole host of the bugs. It's just, and fixing some of our back-end tools, which you guys don't care about, like, generally speaking, but it will make you and Halish very, very happy.
Rejoice.
And you guys then indirectly will like it, because if Blair's happy, he'll be less punishing in the game design.
Well, we'll make cooler
no,
things.
it means that the powers will be cooler.
Right,
So.
it just means that we can make cooler things. Than
Yeah.
I think we've made a lot of really cool things with the tools we have.
Yeah, for sure.
But the better the tools, the cooler the things that you can make.
Absolutely.
Right, so it's definitely a worthwhile investment.
We have some really interesting, this is a total tangent, but I'll take it anyway because it's interesting. We have some really interesting things coming in this next version that will later down the line surface in really interesting ways, like the Parcel adjective system,
Yep.
right? So adjectives is basically a way of putting tags on players. So you can say, I put on a helmet, the helmet puts on the invisibility tag, I'm now invisible, I take off the helmet, I'm not invisible. That, I just watched Clash of the Titans over the weekend.
Oh, okay.
So that's
There you
why,
go. Okay.
That's why that example jumped to the top of my head. The original one, the one released the Kraken one, not this new one. The one with Bobo. It's awesome. So anyway,
Wait, they didn't put Bobo in the updated
they
one?
made a joke. They were going through the armory, and one guy reaches in and finds a mechanical owl, and he's like, "What's this bullshit?" And he throws it to the side. I was like, "Screw you, buddy. I hate your movie. Burn in hell." So anyway, I didn't really say that. I was children. CC, don't give me that look. So, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, the Parcel adjective system. So adjectives are a way that we can basically tag players with anything, right? So you can tag somebody with sin, or you can tag them as cursed, or whatever. So a power can apply a tag to me, or to my group, or to Blair, or whatever.
Right.
And then other powers can look for that adjective when they trigger and say, oh, he's got sin on him, I need to do this, that, and the other.
Sure.
So what we've never had the ability to do was do adjectives on a parcel level, right? So
What is a parcel?
a parcel is a chunk of land, right, that is shaped like a Tetris piece.
Okay.
And you can see this very clearly if you go into your personal or eternal kingdom, because you can actually drag and drop and move those pieces of land, and they stitch together in real time seamlessly, and you can use that to design out your world, which I still think is a miracle, and I'm surprised that more people aren't just aghast that that works. You don't even have to reboot your server. You literally move a mountain, and it just moves and works. So that's all working. We have that. That's a thing. So in the campaign worlds, we generate our campaign worlds procedurally, kind of like Minecraft, though instead of using little bricks to do it, we're using these parcels. So a parcel is basically an area of land. We also have networks of parcels, which are basically little tiles that, well, not little, they're actually giant, but they're chunks of land that we stitch together into kind of a network. So it actually looks like a branching tree pattern. Canyons work that way. So a canyon is stitched together. I need a straight and then a turn and then a T intersection or whatever. Roads are the same way. Forests are the same way. So each of those is a network made of little 1x1 parcels, little just single 1x parcels. So before, parcel don't know what parcel is. Like if I walk onto a road parcel with my character, okay, it's just terrain, right? It didn't have it had no actual like concept of the fact that it was a road.
Yep.
We do that at generation. It figures out how to organize them, but by the time it gets down to your client, it doesn't matter. It's just a tile. So parcel adjectives means we can now add tags to those parcels so that I can actually say, hey, road, you're a road. And then my caravan animal can say, hey, I'm on a road. I get a power that gives me a 10% speed boost. So
Yep.
I'm a swamp parcel. That means any player who comes into me now has the swamp gas poison effect, and they will stop regaining stamina. And then when they leave that parcel, that poison gas thing is removed. So this opens up a huge amount of gameplay for us,
Yeah.
right? We can actually have now a building that I can place in my stronghold that is a monolith that turns off flying in the zone. So it's a no-fly area.
Yep.
Right? Now, you're not going to be able to build all of the things, but we're going to have choices of the things you can build, and those choices now can actually be impactful across all the players, all the monsters. It's really cool.
It is, and we
It's
basically
really cool.
we had powers and we had the world.
Yeah.
and there was like they
There
didn't
wasn't
know
a
about
bridge
you.
between them.
And then Steve built the bridge for us. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, we can do all kinds of
And
crazy
buildings now can add and remove parcels as well,
Yes.
which is really cool. So
things. Yeah.
So anyway, that's really neat. And eventually we'll get to tie this into all sorts of things. We'll tie it into the weather system so that if a druid is there, they can increase the chances of a storm. Like we can do post-launch, all the things with this system. It's just a really cool. I get excited about the architectural pieces that snap into place when they open up an entire new, like, a whole new canvas for us to go and play with. I think that's really cool.
It was that Lego that we always needed.
Yeah, it's just that key piece, right?
And then you get it, you're like, oh my God, look at all these things I can do.
Oh,
now.
there's actually another one that's coming too, which is we call them push button interactables, right? It's basically now tying any object in the world that you can walk up to and have to interact to be able to trigger a power in the world, and that power does something, including adding parcels, adjectives. So we're getting all these pieces now, and it's going to give us a ton of potential growth later down the line.
Absolutely.
And a bunch that we're going to use in this milestone, actually. So anyway, total tangent, but
Yep.
I thought you guys would think it's cool. I think
You
it's
seem
cool.
very excited about it.
I am super excited about it.
Yeah.
Actually, is really, really cool because it basically makes it also internally, right? It means that now if Blair and I cook up an idea like we want to put a poison swamp effect on the swamps, we don't have to go back to engineering to do it. That's what's really cool about it. We can just rig it up ourselves.
We can just do it ourselves. And,
know?
and again, when you're trying to make the world like a giant toy, it's a giant playground that you can play in and all these little things that you can click on. The ability to click on things and then do other things
is really
is
pretty
huge.
cool.
And it's gated by design imagination, really, or engineer walking, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you did that? And you're like, yeah, I can do that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Without asking for anything, I can just try and prototype it right now. So it opens up a whole bunch of the world actually being fun.
I think we should end on that.
Can you explain or elaborate your business model? After the initial big influx with people buying the game, how are you going to ensure an income so that the game will last for a long time? Also, have you revisited VIP? Elaborate, please, if yes.
Yeah, so we have revisited VIP, and we're going to we've been talking about how and when we're going to announce that. So I can't announce it yet because Cece will stab me. She'll actually has a pen in her hand. She will walk over here and stab me in the neck to keep me from talking. So, but we'll talk about that very soon. I agree with you. I think making money over time so that we can pay our people over time so we can keep making the game better over time. That's a good goal. We have goal congruence. We have agreement on the goal. So VIP is one part of it. Micropayments is another part of it, though. As you can see, we've really moved away from that since Kickstarter. We kind of pulled anything that resembled the original Kickstarter bundles off of our store. The only way you can get those now is to go through like Marquee Dragon or one of our kind of official trusted traders, which you should. That's cool. If you're interested in one of those, go check those out. Those are pretty neat. In the long run, I think that we will rely more heavily on things like skins and stuff like that. We actually have some of the art for this done and already in the game. For example, the war tribes, right? They clearly are rigged up to be working characters.
Right.
I could technically put Iroquois skins up in the shop right now, and you could go buy them, and you would own them, but they wouldn't quite work because there's no tie to actually let you apply that to your character. But we'll get that kind of stuff. So eventually, we have ideas for this stuff. It'll be the same kind of stuff that other games do. We just have to be very, very careful that we don't let it be pay to win. We are a competitive game, so we need to make sure that there's a nice little firewall.
There's a lot of confusion from people sometimes about what pay to win actually means.
Okay.
So when we say pay to win, what are we saying?
So,
Just to make it absolutely clear.
yeah, I mean, as you can tell, even the industry's expectations of what is considered play to win has changed
In the last 5 years.
In the last 5 years, and so we've tried to be better and better about being in front of that. So a couple years ago, in December, I think 2 years ago, I felt like there was just a sea change in what was allowed, what people thought was acceptable. So we, at that point, still had all of our original Kickstarter, like castles and keeps and stuff, up on the website. And so I walked into Gordon and just said, I know we sell one of those every now and then, and it's going to hurt us on funding right now, but we need to pull those down because I heard some users talking about it, and they said, hey, building my EK is something that I care about. It's a big reward. So I don't want to be able to go and just have somebody buy that. And I was like, well, okay, I can see that. I mean, I didn't see it as, it's certainly not like selling something in a campaign world, but I also don't want, it's a balance, I guess. The tough thing is this is a hard question, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we know clearly this thing over here, which is I can buy a magic longsword that does 5,000 points of damage per hit. That's obviously pay to win.
Right.
That's not even in consideration, right? That's way, way out there. Over here, though, you've got stuff like that. Like, can I buy a cottage for my EK? Well, it's not a campaign world, and it's not really giving you an in-game benefit. So, and most people see it as housing, so that seems like that's okay.
Right.
A $2,000 version of that's starting to seem cash grabby, and so this is a very, very challenging question, Val.
Right.
And because even answering it as I am right now is just asking, it's painting a target on my back, right? That some people are
But
going
you
to
already
disagree.
have a target
Of
on your
course I
back.
do, but some people are going to disagree for
Yes.
out of whatever reason. So ultimately, we're just going to have to make the call as we go through and talk about each one. We're going to debate each option out and say, skins is skins considered pay to win? Most people don't seem to think so, so that seems pretty safe. So I would imagine that we'll end up doing that.
But a skin that gave you 5,000 hit points.
That was clearly
Yeah,
right
that
out.
is it.
Right? I
For
mean-
sure.
Not in my
Absolutely.
tribe,
Right?
yeah.
That's not a skin. So, we will be making an announcement back to the larger question is what's your overall pricing model and has it changed that much? So, things that we still feel strongly about is we do like having an upfront purchase price, because if you don't have that, you are literally opening the door for bots and gold farmers and people just shouting on your channels and all sorts of griefing. So I like having an upfront purchase price. I'm not opposed to some kind of free trial, but if we do a free trial in the future, it'll have to be limited in a lot of ways to basically keep it from spilling over to those things I just mentioned. I like VIP. I've always thought VIP was pretty cool. We made it optional, so we'll try and strike a balance to where people think it's really, really valuable, but at the same time, people who just can't afford it or don't buy it still feel like they have a very full game experience. In terms of EK stuff, I'm still open on that. But certainly the high dollar stuff has already been pulled down, and who knows, we may decide that we don't want to do that anymore either. So I have other ideas that CC probably doesn't want me to get into that we can talk about, but they're post-launch anyway because we don't have time to implement them. So it's the best answer I've got. It's not an
No, it's a
amazing
great
answer.
answer.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's the best I can give ultimately, which is we'll use the best judgment we can. We hear the concerns. We agree with a lot of the concerns. Some of them we think are a little farther out there. So we'll have to find a balance that works for you guys, works for the community, and also a balance that allows us to stay in business. I mean, ultimately, we do have to sell something. That is accurate.
Is any progress on guild banks? Any chance of them coming with the big milestone?
So you won't like the progress that I had. I think I talked about this last time, but I actually thought we could stitch it together. Like, oh, well, here's a thing. Let's just go and put like a container node into the building, and they can stick the chest in there, and then they can just fill the chest, and they can control who has access to their EK, and so that'll work. And we tried that, and it kind of worked, except if the server reboot, all the interior all the items stored were lost.
Yeah.
So by kind of worked, I mean it didn't actually work at all. So we pulled it out.
It gave you the illusion of working.
I know, and just last week, I actually raised the question, could we do the same thing with vendors? Like, okay, well, let's just give them a vendor that they can put stuff on, and that'll clearly work, but that didn't solve the problem. Vendors are only one person can take the stuff on and off. It didn't allow them to
there's no guild discount.
There was no way to do guild. So that one didn't work either. So the short answer is I don't have an easy stitched together solution for this. So it's in the pipe. We'll get to it when we get to it. I don't actually know I think there's something coming in .110, but I actually don't know. I'd have to go and look. It's not it's one of those things where I get that if you're playing the game right now, it's a gap, like I said on that whiteboard. It's a big hole. But just because it's a hole doesn't mean that it should take priority over the other stuff like the victory system, right? Like the strategy game system. So we will get to it. I recognize that it's a problem.
So what's the next thing that we need to talk about?
I didn't know if we were talking about that or not.
Are we
We
talking
are.
about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have a slide for it?
Do you have a slide for it? All right, we're going to bring it back. It was so popular. We're going to bring back, it's the Decapathon 2 Electric Boogaloo, right? And we're going to do it again. So again, I realize that this is a repeat of something we've done, but it was a pretty cool thing that we've done. It's another opportunity to get some cool glowy skulls, which is always fun.
Looks like they updated the art too.
And we did do an art update. I'm trying so hard to feature freezes, but occasionally there's gaps in the armor. So this is a new one that's going to come out. I think it'll be fun. I think it's a cool way to continue pushing on things as you guys kind of entertain yourselves and buy us time to get this game done and get it out.
Right.
So Decapathon 2 is coming. We will see you there.
And there was much rejoicing. They are very excited about that.
Cool.